Passionate, driven, enthusiastic, euphoric. This is who we are as entrepreneurs. But how we leverage these incredible attributes to dream and build businesses that scale and grow is what this podcast is all about. Hello, I'm attorneypreneur Josh Brown, and welcome to Franchise Euphoria. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Franchise Euphoria. I'm thrilled to have on Loren Kutsko today. He is a franchisee with a really interesting franchise business called the Entrepreneur's Source. The Entrepreneur's Source is a global leader in business and franchise coaching. They help people build rewarding careers, take control of their lives, and create financial freedom. Their unique discovery and education process empowers their clients to explore alternative career options outside of the traditional job market in franchising and business ownership. Hello, Loren, and welcome to the show.
Thanks, Josh. It's great to be here.
Great to be here a second time, right? I mean, I guess we could share this with the audience. I recorded this the first time around and had a little glitch in my recording process. So thank you so much for being gracious about it and coming back on for a second time, as the first one did not record. So thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. No problem.
So tell me a little bit about your company. Obviously, this is the Franchise Euphoria podcast. I think you're familiar with the show, and I'm very interested in the Entrepreneur's Source. Can you tell me a little bit about that franchise business?
Yeah, absolutely. It's pretty exciting stuff, actually. We've been around for about 30 years. And, most recently in my career, I was at a tech startup. And so when I found out that this existed, the Entrepreneur's Source, I was pretty excited about it because it just seemed unheard of. What we do is coach our clients through a process of discovering what businesses are out there that they can own. We work with about 200 different businesses. 95% of them are franchises, but we also work with some license opportunities and other kinds of business opportunities. And so what we do is a very client-centered focus, a client-centered process of doing a personality profile, talking about their career background and what they'd like to achieve in their career from a lifestyle standpoint, income, what kind of wealth and equity they want to build. And then we narrow down their search for them and work with them every step of the way. And it doesn't cost them anything. So that's why I say it's pretty exciting stuff. It's kind of a win-win scenario.
So it seems like it's part coaching, part consulting type work. Is that accurate? Yeah, I mean, we like to think of ourselves and focus on the coaching aspect of it, where we're not necessarily the experts at what is going to be an expert in each business or an expert in our clients, but more of a coaching process where we ask a series of questions to help our clients discover it for themselves. So, if you think about the great business leaders, Bill Gates, Oprah Winfrey, these people all have business coaches, executive coaches. If you think about great athletes, these people have coaches, but the coach's role is not to do the work, but it's to help them do it and help hold them accountable and be part of the process so that the work gets done better. Well, what's interesting to me in part is that, you are a franchisee yourself through the Entrepreneur's Source, which is a franchise system, as you explained, but you're also help other people get into franchise type businesses. So I'm curious, with your background, you mentioned that you were involved in a tech company prior to the Entrepreneur's Source. What do you think prepared you to then make the leap and become a franchisee with the Entrepreneur's Source?
Well, it ended up being coaching and mentoring other entrepreneurs ended up being a lot of what I was spending my time on, sometimes on the side, sometimes as a direct result of my role. There were a few startup incubators that got started here where I am in Phoenix, Arizona, and I started playing the role of mentor there. And just kind of that coaching entrepreneur aspect was something that I spent a lot of time doing. Even before the tech startup, I was at a humanitarian agency in the president's office. And so it just seems like over the course of my career, over the course of the past 15 years or so, I spent a lot of time just kind of coaching and guiding and advising people in the chief executive role. And that
bridged itself over nicely into kind of an entrepreneur coaching role.
So there's a number of people listening who are curious, looking into the whole franchise space. If you wouldn't mind, can you walk us through the process that you would take somebody through who's considering getting into or looking at a franchise system as a means to start and own a business and walk into the entrepreneurial space? I mean, what do you guys do at the Entrepreneur Source, I guess, at the outset of the engagement and then on through the process?
Yeah, great question. Well, the first thing we do is really just kind of get introduced to one another and make sure it's kind of a good fit. It's usually a brief introduction, 15, 20 minutes. And I'll just try to understand, where is somebody coming from? Why on earth do they think that they would want to own a business, right? This is not easy stuff. I mean, your whole podcast is dedicated to, in a lot of ways, your whole practice is dedicated to, business ownership, which we all know has its rewards, but is also extremely difficult. There's lots of obstacles along the way, and there's way more failure in some cases than success. And so just kind of, helping somebody to very initially understand why they want to even go down this path. And also, are they a good fit for a coach, or are they more of a DIY type of person? I've got one client who came to me and said, I've looked at over 200 different franchises. And it sort of made my head spin. I was like, wow, you're more of an expert than I am in some ways. And because there's just so much data out there to gather. And so part of what I'm doing is going, is that you? Are you the type of person that wants to sort of Google around, go to entrepreneur.com, find out this information on yourself? Or do you want somebody working next to you who can help make this process a little bit smoother?
So that's to start the process. So you take them through. Is that just a series of? Do you have checklists? Do you have questions? Do you have resources that you send them to? I mean, I'm always curious about this because I think it's really, really important. And when people call me and I send them to folks like you, I'm always doing it from the vantage point, at least at the outset, to say, hey, are you a good fit for a franchise system? Because I see on a daily basis people who are not good fits for franchise systems, and they end up regretting their purchase. So what are some of the specific things that you take people through, or that people can think about to get an idea if they're listening and wondering themselves, am I a good franchise candidate, or would I be better just doing it myself?
Yeah. So like I said, at the beginning of the process, it's a little less formal. Let's get to know one another. Let's see if this is a good fit. But then, once they sort of understand what I do and how I can be helpful, if they do want to move forward, then we kind of dive into a more formal set of questions. So I basically go through and try to understand what triggered their search. Why are they looking? What are they trying to achieve? What are their goals? Where do they want to be in 5 years? And then, some personal stuff, family, hobbies, interests, kind of what's driving it from the personal side. A lot of people want to spend more time with family. Some people, all of a sudden have an empty nest and are trying to figure out what to do with their time. So, sort of different motivators, trying to pull those out. And then once we kind of get through just that question series, I'll send a more formal questionnaire that we use called Tell Us More About You. And then I always use a disc profile with my clients to get their personality background as well. And a lot of those, frankly, they just kind of guide the conversation. I don't like to stick so close to the script necessarily, because if a client wants to go down a particular path or has certain thoughts, then I really want to hear specifically what's driving it for them. But these things form as a guide to start the process, to start the conversation.
Do you find that people who end up having long-term success in franchising fit a certain disc profile? Maybe they're high D's or high I's or S's or C's. I'm not sure, but do you find that there's sort of a combination that particularly works well for franchising?
Well, I mean, franchising is so broad, as you know, that I don't think you can actually say that. I think there's, 6,000 franchises out there. There's 200 that we work with. And so really it's not use the personality of a client to keep them in or out of business ownership, but to help figure out what kind of business they would be a good fit for. What environments do they thrive in? Because with so many different kinds of businesses, you can be behind the counter at a retail store where your customers come to you and it's mainly about marketing. That might be really good for some personality profiles. Sometimes it's more of a B2B heavy duty sales role where you got to go and pound some pavement and knock on some doors. And that might be good for some other personality profiles. Sometimes it's more of a team building approach that the owner has. And so that might be good for some other profiles, right? So it's all about understanding the client and then understanding the business and providing a few matches.
So once you get through that process and you've now assessed them through a DISC profile, they've filled out the form, where they tell you more about themselves. What's the next step in your process?
Yeah. So at this point, we spent about probably 90 minutes together total. And then if they want to, this is where I kind of give them another choice. Do you want to move forward? Do you want to have me go find some businesses for you? And if they say yes, then we'll schedule a third meeting. And that's really where the fun starts, right? Because then I go and in between those two meetings, will look for a few businesses, anywhere from 3 to 5, depending on the client, depending on the situation. And then we'll schedule that call. I'll get back on the phone or meet them face to face and say, here's the businesses that I've found for you that I'd like you to start validating with. And I'll introduce them to those businesses. And so in a lot of ways, at that point in the process, it kind of picks up to some degree where the process would start for them if they were diving straight in to explore one specific franchise. But now they've got somebody in their corner who knows them, who's been with them for a few meetings and really understands their goals. And so they're going to still go through the franchisor's process. But after every meeting with the franchisor, they come back with me and we talk about, what did you like? What didn't you like? What were some of the pros? What were some of the cons? What did you find out about financing this business? What did you find out about the total investment? What did you find out about the item 19? And we really just talk through all the details. And then I kind of help to guide them and set up the guardrails around the process. Now they, the whole time, get to have their foot on the accelerator and the brake, guiding the pace of it, right? Because nobody's trying to hurry anybody along, and it's certainly not about a hard sell, because this is about getting them into the business that's going to help achieve their dreams.
So as they're looking at different systems, I think you mentioned earlier, you have a couple hundred systems that are part of the Entrepreneur Resource Network. Are those the primary systems that you are connecting them with once you determine that they're going to be a good fit for a particular type of franchise?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then as part of those 200, can you kind of give an example of, does it run the gamut across various sectors in franchising? We all know that franchising runs across the entire economy. Are there particular sectors that you guys don't work within, or do you work across all of them?
No, we try very hard to work across all of them and to have a few options across investment levels, because again, as you know, things start as low as a $20,000 investment up to over $1 million investment. And so in one category, we'll try to have a handful that are across those areas, and that just helps it really, even in that third phase. A lot of clients start to feel like, okay, now I need to make a decision. Now this is where the rubber meets the road. This thing's getting real. But we actually discourage that, or we encourage our clients to kind of keep the decision-making hat off, even if at that phase of the process, and really to focus on learning. There is no downside to learning. And so, we'll move forward with clients. We're not brokers. We're not people that are trying to understand very quickly, like, are you going to do this within the next 30 days? And if not, I don't want to work with you. We are coaches that are aiming at clarity around what's next for people's careers, and we are comfortable with them using the franchise discovery process to learn if business ownership would be a good fit for them or not. And we call it a win, even if they talk to a couple franchises and decide no, because what we hope for then is that they're going to stop waking up in the middle of the night wondering if they should be their own boss instead of going to work the next day. That's a win. And so for us, we say, let's not make a decision yet. Let's talk to a few franchises, go through the process with them, learn what they have to offer, learn what your life would look like if you were doing this kind of career instead, and then come back and talk to me about it. And so our portfolio is really all about showing options that they can explore to make an objective decision by looking at multiple things at once, instead of just saying, wow, that Dunkin' Donuts was full the last time I went to it. That's the kind of franchise I want to buy. Right. We discourage that. We want them to look at multiple things, hopefully some things they've never heard of. is ideal.
No, that's interesting. I mean, so do you connect them as well within these franchise systems? Do you connect them with current and maybe former franchisees within the system, or do you connect them to your contact and then you kind of take a back seat in the process, then they come back to you after they've had an opportunity to speak with the franchisor? Or how much of a role do you play once you make that introduction?
I always continue to meet with my clients throughout their process until the end, whether they say, I'm done with this forever, I'm done with this for now, or I'm going to move forward with this particular franchise. So we're meeting every week, again, kind of playing back what they learned in their meetings, helping them come up with new questions for their follow-up meetings, things like that. As far as meeting with owners of these franchise systems, that is the most important step in the process. And that is truly where the real facts about a system can best be learned. And so I encourage all of my clients to try to get that far, and even to kind of suspend disbelief or not prematurely dismiss an option even before that step. So the best thing you can do is you can go through the process to learn as much as you can and then get introduced. And it's going to be the franchisor that makes those introductions. But to get introduced to current owners, absolutely.
And so, I mean, it would seem to me that going through this process, if I'm a potential franchisee and I'm looking at this, you're probably dealing with people that are getting it down at some point in time to maybe 2 or 3 options. I mean, is that sort of a goal? And then from there, once you have it down to a small number of options, then you kind of dive in deeper, perhaps go to some discovery days, perhaps take the next step, or where do you go from the introduction and then get it narrowed down? Because I see this where there's a lot of people who have a tough time narrowing it down because there's lots of options. And so one week, oh, this is the greatest thing in the world. And then the next week they're on to something else. I mean, how do you control that process?
Well, it's control would be the wrong word, because again, it really is client focused and coaching, and so we're not going to try to force them to keep something on the list or force them to take something off the list. But we do feel that there's some magic to the number 3. I wouldn't want a client to look at less than 3 options. I wouldn't necessarily encourage them to look at too many more than that, because there's just something that happens in the human brain when you're able to explore a few things, 3 things. And so that is a really important part of the process. And honestly, to keep those 3 things on the list that you're looking at for as long as you can, just like I said before.
Okay. Interesting. No, I mean, I think this is good stuff. I mean, I get a lot of people who ask me about this process in terms of folks like yourself that will take people through that. And I think it's one of those things where you deal with it on a daily basis, but to a lot of people, it's kind of foreign territory. So I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing to dissect it and break it down. I'm curious. I just did a recent podcast on the value of multi-unit franchise ownership, and I've been on this big kick where, I really think that when you look at a lot of different franchise options, a lot of times you put yourself in a better position to ultimately succeed if you are leveraging yourself to own multiple units as opposed to just one unit. Obviously, it depends on the system that you're buying, but I'm curious, do you deal with multi-unit franchise ownership, or are you more focused on single franchise owner-operator purchases?
No, we definitely focus on both. But again, it's really about the client. So there's actually a standard question and kind of educational moment in the process, because so many people that are exploring franchises don't even really know what the words mean that you just said, right? What's multi-unit owner? What's an area developer? What's a regional developer? And so we go through and educate about those terms, and then it comes back to what their goals are. So if somebody's looking to semi-retire and they want to spend 5 to 6 hours a day at the office, or 2 to 3 days a week at the office or something, then we're looking for either the right single ownership that's going to fit that lifestyle, or the right multi-unit ownership that's going to fit that lifestyle. But we're really focused on what's best for the client, what their goals are. Sometimes they have the temperament and the career background. Maybe they've been a regional vice president in sales and marketing for the past 20 years. And so they come in and go, oh, wow, I can be responsible for the sales goals of 20 single unit operators underneath me from the get-go, sign me up. Sometimes they're like, that sounds like the worst job I could ever have. Right. And so they're like, no, put me behind the counter of one store. And so it really is about the particular goals of each client.
No, that's interesting. That it's very, very much true. I mean, it takes a certain skill set to own a number of different franchise units as opposed to just owning one. So obviously, as you indicated, it goes to your background, goes to your experiences, goes to what you really want as a franchise owner. Well, I appreciate you coming on, Loren, again for a second time. I apologize about the first mishap. I'm curious, for those interested out there, you're located in Arizona, but what is your territory? I mean, where do you stretch from? Where can you work? Can you work across the country, or are you limited to Arizona?
The Entrepreneur Source has over 150 coaches working all over North America. And so, there is somebody near where any client could be. Anybody who calls me in particular, I'll work with, but I will only advertise or market my services here in Arizona.
So what's a good way to get a hold of you? Is it through email, through Twitter, through any of the social media chains, all of the above? Every client's different. So contact me in the way that you prefer. But, at the end of the day, we're going to have a conversation. So if you want to give me a phone call, that's a great start. My number is 602-800-5773. My website is tesaz.com. And my email address is lkutsko@esourcecoach.com. Fantastic. We'll put all that information as well in the show notes once the episode goes live. So, but thank you again, Loren. It's been really interesting talking to you. I think the Entrepreneur Source is a very interesting a franchise opportunity. I think you guys are doing some really good stuff, and I'd hate to let you go without mentioning Art Cooley, who I believe is the head of the Entrepreneur Source now, right?
Yeah, that's correct. You had Art on a couple weeks ago. He's an incredible leader. We're thrilled to have him steering the ship. And, he had a great background as the president of Alpha Graphics. And he and I have gone jogging together a few times, and I'm thrilled to have him at the helm.
Well, that's great. I mean, it's so important, as I talk about a lot on the show, to have good leadership within the franchisor system. So you guys certainly have that in Art. And thank you again for coming on. I look forward to staying in touch.
Sounds good. Thanks, Josh. Have a great day.
Hopefully this was helpful for you today. If you are in the market for a franchise, I would highly encourage you to check out my free ebook, which is What to Know Before You Buy a Franchise. You can head over to my website at that's INDY franchiselaw.com and download it there for free. And let me know what you think. If you're enjoying this podcast, if you're enjoying the value that you're getting from this podcast, I'd also invite you to go to iTunes and provide me with a rating and review. It always helps for visibility on the podcast. So thank you so much for your support, and hope this episode was helpful to you.
Thanks for being with us today on the Franchise Euphoria podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to go to iTunes and provide a review. Also, please remember that although Josh Brown is a licensed and practicing attorney, nothing contained in this podcast should be construed as legal advice, because it is not. The information contained in this podcast is general and educational in nature, and none of it should be relied upon as legal advice. That being said, if you have questions for Josh and would like to contact him, please email him at josh@franchiseeuphoria.com. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope you tune in to our next weekly episode.